doing, folks? So happy with the bike yesterday with our new gear ratio. So went out this morning, bit of sunshine, the roads were a bit drier, thought I'd go and have a blast. And because we're struggling with the gears yesterday, because I thought it was my boots, where the instep of the boot wasn't allowing me to get under the gear lever properly for upshifting. Before I went out, I moved the gear lever up 2 splines. Off we go, and it really struggling upshifting second to third, third to fourth. No problem going down the box, fantastic, but every now and again you would pull the lever up, pick your next gear, and then try again, and even though you could feel spring resistance, nothing was happening. So I've opened it up this morning, not the full gearbox, only the end plate where the shifting mechanism is, and there's a few things that I don't think are quite right, so I'll just point you down. Let's have a quick look. So this is the little ratchet mechanism, and first of all I was thinking maybe the pawls were worn on there, so they're absolutely perfect. And also I got a mirror or lay down looks underneath on the selector plate where these engage, because normally the edges of the lips wear away and they start to slip off, but all that's good. So I took this thing apart, and it might not pick this up, but this is pretty well battered on the end, and this is what pushes against the springs, and the end of the springs didn't look very good. So I went and looked into the parts book, and they're supposed to be like little caps that go in, little stump and little cap that goes in here that this peg rests on, which they're obviously, you know, I'm just going on the edge of the spring there, which according to the parts book isn't right. But also this is what the springs sit in, and this is what this little device runs back into in, pushing against the springs. It looks like the pin has not been pushed in far enough, and you can see where it's been digging into this. I think the springs are supposed to stop against this point here, and then only the pin pushes against one spring and leaves this spring behind so it doesn't follow it. Then this one pushes back into the middle position, and then when you go the other way, that spring stays behind, and then the peg pushes on this spring, and that's what gives you your centralized spring-loaded mechanism either side. But that pin has definitely been striking and catching on there. I actually built it up with the spacers, a couple of M6 bolts, and put it back in, and you could feel it catching on the on that bit there. So I'm going to have to, the pin is just a bit of silver steel, a bit of quarter silver steel, which I've got, so I'm going to make a new one of them. I'm going to be cutting it, grinding the ends down and pushing it back in to the right depth, obviously. But I'm going to have to make something for these. Like in the parts book it shows like little caps with a little recess so they sit in the bottom of there, but whether they're made of steel or brass or whatever. But I'm going to make 2 out of some brass, and I'm going to make a new pin for this out of a bit of quarter stainless silver steel, and I'll play around pushing it into the right depth, because I can build this up in this casing and play around with it till I'm happy. So let's just knock a couple of bits up on the lathe and see how we go. So we'll be back in a short while when we've made the bits and pieces. for these springs. So catch it in a second. So there's our new pin. It wasn't, it was actually 732s. I didn't have any, so I've had to turn some down. So just, can you catch the wear on that other, the original one? From maybe. It's kind of like one more on one side than the other. So the new one, hopefully. And here's our little cups. Now whether they're too deep, it's hard to tell off the drawing. They fit quite nicely in there. So I'm going to build it up and just see what it feels like, the return mechanism, etc. Before I put it on the bike. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, that's it assembled. I have had the cover on and tried it, it is okay. But a few things, you won't be able to catch that, but you can see there is some marks on there. It's actually been twisted, the framework itself. I don't know how that would happen. And when you tighten it down, it made the relationship between this, where the shaft comes into here, it's not a proper bush, and the bushing in here, even with nothing in it, was tight. So I've twisted it, pulled it, whatever. I've actually shimmed it. I've had to put a shim under there, and I've actually put a shim on the gear mechanism, gear rod changing shaft itself, because the end float was quite a lot. Because also I think with the excessive end float, it was allowing the little pin to come further forward and trip on that high point there. So I'm happy I've had it together. I'm just gonna, I know it's in oil, or not in oil, the oil level's probably around there somewhere. So I'm gonna grease this up and put it back, and then I'll just show you it operating with everything on. And it does really spring back now to the central position, the gear lever. So I'm fairly sure that was the issue. But we'll be back in a sec. Okay, and there we are. Beautiful. So no notchiness or anything now. It's quite pleased with that. So obviously I'll have to go out for a road test. Don't need any excuses for that, by the way. But I'm sure that was the issue. That feels lovely now, that, because I've put those extra, made those little cups on the springs. It's obviously increased the spring tension as well. So yeah, hopefully we've cracked it. I don't think I'm going to get out for a road test on it. I'm fairly certain we've fixed it 100%, but if I do get out, I'll add it onto the end of this vid. So we'll catch you guys on the next one.